Hello, new listener. You are tuned into the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. My name is Emilio Tostado.
I'm Julian Barthold.
And I'm Madeline Johnson.
And the three of us are friends. We all work in a Midtown Manhattan music school, and we love talking about movies at the end of the night. It just kind of happens.
Often we would do this in lieu of a good night's sleep.
Me, definitely.
Yeah.
Certainly over here.
And what you're going to be listening to is the first episode that we ever recorded of something that later got a lot more fleshed out.
Yeah. So we recorded a number of these just to kind of find our footing, to see what these conversations could sort of turn into and what we were drawn to talk about and in what fashion.
And over the course of the first few episodes, we determined a series of categories which we're going to use to organize our later episodes. You'll see these unfold from one episode to the next, but this first one you're going to hear would fall under the category of a suggestion box episode.
Which means that one of us, or at least one of us, came to the others with a movie that we were excited to talk about and unpack, and that at least one of us had not seen before.
Which for this one was you.
Yes, I was the one who was not hip to this movie. Kind of blew my hair back. It was fun though. It was cool. It was a good time to talk.
And I think we had just a really fun conversation, and we kind of realized that we were really onto something with this. And so it evolves over time and will continue to evolve, but we're really just excited for people to hear our conversations about movies, starting with this. And thank you so much for listening. And here we go.
Enjoy. This is something we find ourselves doing at the end of the night. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm always the one who has to leave early from conversations. And so I was like, we should sit and formalize this because we have a lot of fun doing it. And I think we've settled on an interesting movie to start talking about.
Yeah.
And that would be Darren Aronofsky's Mother.
Exclamation point.
Yes. And it's also lowercase.
Lowercase m.
Yes, this is my understanding too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the Bong Joon-ho film Mother.
Mother, yeah.
Or the Albert Brooks film Mother.
Yes, also Mother. Or the J-Lo film The Mother.
This is true. Or in a gender switch, Anthony Hopkins, the father.
Right.
Just talking about parents here in a big way. Jennifer Lawrence plays a nameless young wife of an older writer/poet, played by Javier Bardem. And she dotes on him. She makes him meals. She gives him ample space to work and has taken on the massive task of renovating and restoring his home, which in the recent past was nearly destroyed in a fire. They live in this home, a Victorian mansion, secluded in nature, far removed from society, which is ostensibly a great, quiet environment for someone to work and to be creative. But the poet is in a massive creative rut, and the worst kind, right? He's unproductive when he makes time to work, and then he's haunted by his lack of productivity when he isn't working.
He's uninspired.
Yes.
And that has been really just plaguing him.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, feel free to chime in, by the way, on any of this. And it's in this state that mysterious guests begin to arrive at their doorstep, one at a time, kind of wedging themselves into their lives in an increasingly disingenuous and sometimes insidious ways. Months later, as this couple are expecting a child, and after the poet has released his latest work, their lives become changed when a sudden and violent presence descends on their home. And the fate of their unborn child and their relationship hangs in the balance, as the world that the poet's wife has worked so hard to curate is torn to pieces. Mm-hmm. Was that somewhat accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you captured it quite well.
Okay.
And left some to the imagination.
Very cool. I guess I would start by saying, of the three of us, I'm the one who has seen this movie most recently, but for the first time. Mm-hmm. Just a couple days ago, I fired it up. But you guys already have some opinions about this movie, have thought quite a bit about it. And one of the reasons we're talking about it is that you guys are slightly split on how much you actually enjoy / experience the film. I don't really know quite where to begin, but I did do this because I do like some research here and there when I start to do this kind of stuff. And I told myself I was not going to watch like any kind of YouTube recaps, any sort of YouTube analysis. Like didn't want to do that. Wanted to come in totally fresh, just feel it the way I did. But I did decide to listen to Mark Maron's interview with Darren Aronofsky, which he did in probably late November, early December of 2017. So this is more or less right after the film came out, maybe a couple months or so after the film was out. Darren Aronofsky said this. He said, quote, "We knew we weren't making a crowd pleaser. This is punk. This is in your face. And I think it came out of a place of rage that I was having." He said, environmental, personal, and biblical in that order. And from the very little conversation that we have had, I feel like some of that are things that we're going to talk about.
That definitely comes through for me. Like when I think about this movie, I think about it first and foremost as a statement on our like environmental collapse.
Okay.
And we can get more into that in a bit, but that is like my takeaway number one from this movie. And then obviously, as you said, like the biblical allegory in this as well.
Where do you feel this resonating the most with you, Julian?
That's a good question. And I think that definitely as we talk about it more, I'm like already am seeing angles of it that I think I knew were there, but didn't really consider too abundantly beforehand. I think probably the biblical allegory was the first thing that really stood out to me watching the movie. I think in certain ways that it might be the most of all. So what were the three dimensions? It was the biblical, personal, and environmental.
Correct.
I feel like that might be the most transparent of the three from that movie.
Biblical?
Yeah, the biblical dimension, just from a first viewing. And this is a good movie for people who are credit watchers like me, because you see it as the credits roll that the titles of the characters reveal something, and that I think particularly Javier Bardem's character, who is credited either as simply he or him with a capital H, where Jennifer Lawrence's titular mother is a lowercase mother, and so
he's the only one to be capitalized of all the characters.
Yeah,
man, woman, and the children, and all the other characters are also lowercase in the credits.
Yeah. Seeing that, it's a pretty on the nose statement that this is biblical. Not to mention all of the other qualities of the movie that make it so. So I think that of those dimensions, that was what stood out to me first. The personal element. I mean, I know there's more to be known about Aronofsky than I do, but that I wouldn't necessarily have guessed from watching it. Environmental, but that would have stood out too because. I think you don't have to read too deep into the movie to see that the Jennifer Lawrence character is supposed to be the Mother Earth.
Mother Earth, yeah.
Yeah. That this is just a very maybe what the word I'm looking for is far-reaching allegory for something that is contained within a relatively short runtime. It has a very, very massive scope, and so to really to think about it as something that reaches to be environmental, it makes sense.
And when we were talking a little bit about credits and about punctuation, and with the way that this movie crescendos towards the end and builds to such an extent, he's spoken about like the exclamation point in the title being the exclamation point in the tail end of the film.
Yeah. The exclamation point at the tail end of the film?
Or just sort of like the fact that it builds to this exclamation.
I got you.
The same way that the title does.
Mm-hmm. One other thing, speaking to the anatomy of the film, the outline of it, is that it is, in the end, a circular movie. That it ends the way that it begins. And you don't know it's going to be that way until it literally ends. And, when you see it in the beginning, you do not know what comes before that, but it's portrayed as a cycle.
And that's why I think this movie holds up pretty well to repeated viewings, because I think once you know where it's going to end, once you know that this has been a cycle for him, not her, because it's a different mother at the end.
Yes.
But once you know that he's in this cycle, I think it's really fascinating to revisit.
One thing I'll say that I thought was kind of funny and interesting about that beginning part it was the choice of words. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the word that when the female in the bed just sort of like wakes up, she turns and she sort of reaches and she's like, where, who is, she's looking for him, but he's not there in bed. Do you guys remember what she says?
I can't say I do.
No.
She says baby.
Oh.
And that's like the term of endearment, which I thought was like very interesting, and that it was like right from the very beginning is sort of made out to be like a nurturer, like right away.
She has this unconditional love for him.
Yes. Yeah. I did find that kind of interesting. What I will say, so I kept it very much from that personal side of things. Mm-hmm. To me, it was very much a movie that was like a cautionary tale for just investing too much in like an insecure, self-centered, mercurial artist type, right? Yeah. I do see, and I'm sure we'll unpack the environmental aspect a little bit more. It seemed like right away everything was just sort of built sort of around this extremely unbalanced relationship. You just see she's like taking care of everything for him, and he is just sort of showing her affection, but in very superficial ways.
Yeah, and she begs him like throughout the film, essentially for his love, but also in the sense of like when there are people intruding, and she begs of him like, no, I want them to leave. I want it to just be us here in our home, like building our family. And he is always brushing her off. Like he always is putting something or someone else ahead of her.
He says, I think at the very beginning when Ed Harris's character comes in, he's like,
oh,
yeah, he's great. He's great. The two of the characters were great.
Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer's awesome
Yeah.
too. But like when he comes in and he says, oh, my wife loves company. Yeah. And you're like, everything that you've seen up to that point is telling you that no, she kind of doesn't.
And to be fair, she is a stranger to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's shown repeatedly through what he says and sort of how he acts that that there is this sort of this distance between them, despite the fact that they are married, despite the fact that she clearly loves him in this seemingly unconditional way.
But he wants someone subservient to him.
Right, right. One thing I'll say though is that I didn't totally see this as a movie that was about toxic masculinity. This felt a little bit more like a movie that was just like about being like self-centered and too caught up in your work to actually receive and give love.
Yeah, I think it's a critique of the like artist muse relationship.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. There were little moments where, and I think it was intentionally done in this way. It was like what she was saying sounded like the kind of thing that a woman who just wants to be with her husband more would say. I feel like it was very carefully constructed, like all this sort of dialogue to make her seem like maybe she was just asking too much. Like maybe like this is just the deal.
He's a genius.
Yeah. He's so like you've got to just like accept it, which I thought was actually kind of funny and sort of made me appreciate the writing a little bit more, because it did, for the briefest of moments, make her seem just like kind of like a jealous, controlling partner who was like, no, it's just us. It's just us. Yeah. We're supposed to live in this world.
Else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you look even slightly past the surface, it's like it's very clear that he's a really terrible partner.
Yeah.
He's not.
It's a very one-sided relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. But but like that was where my head went. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how this didn't occur to me before, but you can really very easily compare that to The Shining, that sort of relationship. Like at no point when I watched the movie initially did that occur to me, but just now I'm thinking like, oh, that's a very obvious parallel.
Also, the kind of like being cooped up in a house.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just us against the world out there. We're in the middle of nowhere.
There's more of a sense that Jack Torrance is going insane in tandem with his writer's block, which is not really something that I think is communicated by the Javier Bardem character.
And we know a little bit more about the details of the location in The Shining, whereas it's left so ambiguous in Mother. And one thing that's interesting is I forget which of the sons they have to take to the hospital, but where is this? I mean, it's not important, but it's like we are viewing their home as, it's on an island essentially. But clearly, I mean, there must be some sort of society nearby to be able to take this guy to a hospital.
I mean, that's what got the whole party started, right?
Yeah.
Is there some semi-proximity to a hospital?
Yeah.
Like, where are all these people coming from,
Yeah,
too?
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess that's, amongst all the craziness that starts happening in that movie, which I think also sort of made me think a lot about dream logic that starts to take place when you're watching a film where it's sort of unclear whether or not what you're seeing is some sort of fantasy or projection, or if it's actually reality, or if it's meant to be some sort of twisted version of reality that is supposed to really more or less reflect what the character's feeling.
And dream logic is something that's worth bringing up with Aronofsky. And I haven't seen very many of his movies, but Black Swan is really the one to bring up in that regard, because much of that movie, it's a spoiler for people who haven't seen it, but much of that movie is spent with the Natalie Portman protagonist believing that this supposedly rival dancer of hers, played by Mila Kunis, is out to get her, when really what we learn at the end of the movie is that Natalie Portman's character is just sabotaging herself the entire time. But she doesn't see it that way, and you as the viewer don't pick up on it immediately. It takes a while to unfold.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too, that this movie also kind of reminded me a little bit of another film, and I don't know too much of this guy's work, to be honest. Luis Buñuel. He's another one of those guys who's kind of pioneered the use of, am I watching a dream? Am I watching reality? And the movie that I thought of a little bit when I was watching Mother was Belle de Jour.
Which I haven't seen.
Yeah. It's a good movie. There are many scenes in that movie that play out where the main character, and both of them are centered around female protagonists who are clearly unhappy in their lives, and they start either calling back memories that they had from the past, or there are these brief moments where it seems like she's experiencing or stuck in a dream, that something snaps her out of eventually. The thing that is distinct about this movie is that whatever is happening in the dream, it's like all these characters seem to be involved in, and they all somehow seem to be on the same page, no matter how absurd it seems to get.
The reality, it seems like, is never really broken. Like, there's never really that kind of moment where someone feels disconnected. Obviously, Mother is kind of frantic in what is happening in my home by the end of it. But everyone else around her, it just seems so matter of fact. Even at the point where there's a SWAT team coming, like it just keeps rolling.
It becomes total madness.
Yeah.
which was oddly kind of fun to watch unfold.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys felt.
Well, one thing, regardless of any personal opinion I had about the movie, it was definitely clear that it was aiming, I thought maybe a little more effectively in the first half of the movie, it was definitely aiming for some comedy. And that especially with like the sort of tone and pacing of the unwanted guests coming into the house, it felt very, there was something almost like slapsticky about it. I think like I'm kind of remembering that portion like near the beginning of the movie where I think it's Donald Gleason and someone else come in and one of them beats the other to death.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's something, I mean, it's a horrible thing that they do, but I feel like it really was, the rapidity of it really played it kind of for laughs almost.
But funny enough, the other person is Brian Gleason. So
oh, really?
It's actually, these are Brendan Gleason's sons playing essentially the Cain and Abel of this story.
Yeah, we could definitely go off of that and start talking about the biblical reference. To me, that was the most the most sort of obvious one.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
man and woman come in and yes, looking in retrospect, they're clearly Adam and Eve, but because it's at first presented as still very normal to an extent where it's like, oh, I forget exactly what his excuse is for coming to the house. You've seen it more recently.
The father character?
Yeah.
His initial...
Ed Harris.
His initial explanation is that he's a doctor, orthopedic surgeon, who is in residency or doing research at the nearby, quote unquote, don't know how close it is, hospital. But yeah, that's what gets the party started.
And
he's
then
looking,
eventually it's like, oh, well, he's a fan, but
who's dying?
yes, who's
That's
dying?
the other thing. He's
But-
dying. It clearly has some sort of esophageal
Because
issue.
it starts initially as, oh, this is just a man stopping by, a doctor in the area. Oh, he's a fan. Oh, he needs my help. You don't immediately necessarily, I think, pick up on the Adam and Eve from him and Michelle Pfeiffer. And then I agree that when the sons come in, and particularly when they start getting violent, that's where the metaphor really comes out. And now in retrospect, like, I don't think it occurred to me at the time, although now it feels so obvious, of like the woman character, you know, going and actually like, I forget what she does, but she picks up the beloved crystal, and this is, you know, the apple.
Right.
yeah.
There you go. That's pretty cool. Well, then would that make the Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer character Adam and
I
Eve?
think they're Adam and Eve.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
With Javier Bardem being God, Jennifer Lawrence being Mother Earth, and then they've sort of created, particularly when you look at Mother has created this home. She is
Right.
renovating the home. This is, I mean, it's referred to as his home, but she has done all the work putting it together in the same way that our Earth does all the work housing us. So then I think like they're welcoming, or he's welcoming these people into his home that she has crafted and that she has cared for.
I never thought about it that way, but I like that a lot. On that subject, I know we've mentioned this pretty much at the top, but how good is Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie?
She's so good in this.
She's so good, and she plays that character so well in the beginning, where she's like, oh, you know, I tend to just ask questions that are too probing, that make people uncomfortable. I'm so sorry. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't help it. And then, oh my God, when she flips, she
Just this tonal
flips.
switch.
Yeah, big time. To me, that just kind of played into the whole aspect of what it's like to be a fan that has lost touch with reality. Right away, they assume that this artist is going to sort of appease them and also house them in their moment of grief and sort of be like, well, this happened here, so, oh my God, please say something.
It's so matter of fact that, well, everyone we know is coming here to mourn.
Yeah. Being so unbelievably out of touch with what is actually happening, which is that there was a murder that was committed by their kids here, and that like it's a crime scene,
Yeah.
and not a place that they should co-opt into
someone
being
call
like,
the police.
yeah, someone call the police. Well, someone clearly did because a SWAT team showed up there.
It took them a while, like an entire pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is speculative, but perhaps maybe like the portrayal of those characters speaks a little more to the personal dimension of the movie for Aronofsky, because, you know, for him as a famous artist, maybe he, I don't know for a fact what his experience has been like in this sphere, but maybe he has dealt firsthand with fans kind of like that.
Possibly. One thing I'll say, and I looked slightly into this, is that he started a relationship with Jennifer Lawrence.
During production.
During production of this film. And the other thing that sort of makes or lends some credibility to me at least, in the way I'm choosing to interpret or place importance on the ways you could interpret this film, is that they actually broke up shortly after the publicity tour.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. And Jennifer Lawrence had said on record that the movie itself was very difficult to make. Then she has to talk about this movie, and then at night, when they're in hotel rooms, her husband just wanted to keep, or her boyfriend at the time wanted to just keep talking about this movie. And so she's like, I can't get away from this movie. And I feel like I need to, and so as a result, that was a place of friction, I guess, in their relationship, which sounds a lot, honestly, like the kind of relationship that Jennifer Lawrence's mother character has with Javier Bardem's poet character, which is somebody who is kind of trapped in this world where the art of their partner becomes sort of tantamount in their lives. Sort of starts to run it, and that the rhythms of life revolve around its creation and it's the celebration of it.
So in that sense, you could see the movie as almost a allegory for their relationship too.
Sure. Or some previous relationship that he might have had that started to play out again with her.
And something that I found interesting that I had to kind of look up what movie she was referring to, but I remembered this quote from her, which I'm looking up now, is about her talking actually on WTF about Phantom Thread and Marin kind of trying to convince her to give this movie a shot. And her being like, I don't need to see this movie. I lived this. And her kind of alluding to like this being a similar kind of relationship explored as what she had with Aronofsky.
Interesting.
That is very interesting because that movie is again about
the artist muse,
a very difficult sort of power structure dynamic there. Where he's clearly married to his work and she again is muse. Very cool.
One significant difference between those two movies though is that in Phantom Thread, and this is again a spoiler for people who haven't seen it, but the so-called Muse character, who's played by Vicky Creeps, I think you pronounce her name, that she eventually gains the upper hand over Daniel Day-Lewis's character.
She comes out on top,
right? And eventually so if it's a power struggle, she wins in a certain way, and it takes her a while, but she gets there. And which is not a dynamic that you really see in the film Mother.
Mother, in some respects, actually in many respects, loses. In a big way here.
And it's interesting because those movies were released not far apart either. They're about, if I remember correctly, about 3 months apart. Those are two filmmakers I never really would have paired together before.
They both are very close when roll call is being done. Just Anderson and Aronofsky.
Totally. I guess maybe now in talking about the timing of the release, maybe now is a good time to talk about reactions, or like at least my personal reaction to Mother at the time of its release. And first, because this is a little briefer, I'll say that when I saw Phantom Thread, I really enjoyed that movie without much reservation at all. But Mother was, I would say that when I, just to preface, when I watch movies, usually I feel like I'm a pretty generous critic of movies in that, like, I really am not going to go out of my way to look for flaws. And, if you look at my Letterboxd account, for instance, you'll see most of the things I see, I rate 5 stars because I'm thinking, if it's, a competently made thing that knows what it is.
It's very kind of you.
It is. Yeah, it is. I'm not willingly the harshest critic of movies. Mother was a movie that really confounded me when I first saw it. And I saw it roughly when it was released, which was in September 2017. And it was one of very few in-theater experiences I've had where I felt like so overwhelmed by what I was watching that I saw it with a friend, not to mention someone who I have an easy time talking about movies with, and normally after we saw things, we could get right into it. But this was one movie that for at least 5 minutes after it was over, we just could not say a single word.
Sometimes a sign of a really good movie.
Yes, and that can be. In this case, I feel like, before getting to any, analysis of the content, I feel like viscerally, like especially with the last 15 or so minutes of that movie, it was so intense that I just felt totally battered after watching it.
Yeah, that's like a movie where you kind of want to call your mom after.
I
just need some comfon.
Absolutely.
That's a poetic choice of analogy there.
Sure.
But so, on a visceral level, it just felt very hard to process. And I think my my consideration at the time was that, okay, this is evidently a very competently made movie. In terms of craft, it knows exactly what it is. I think maybe I was kind of fazed by, the sort of lack of redemptive qualities of the movie, that it really has a very bleak ending where the dominating male character wins. And I guess I was unsure as to the direction that pointed, whether it was really a movie that, effectively critiqued its characters, or was indulging in some of its qualities. It was indulging in the worst tendencies of these characters. I just was very unsure of what to make of it.
And I think ultimately, you have to question, does he win? I mean, yes, he does. He is the one that, survives to see another cycle. Mm-hmm. But I think our assumption can be that he's been trapped in this particular cycle. He continues to be uninspired. He continues to be kind of a failing writer. Yes, he continually has these beautiful wives that love him unconditionally, that ultimately does not fulfill him. Mm-hmm. She's the one that gets to say, I am done. I am out of this. I've had enough.
But she does so by paying with her heart, right?
Yeah.
And she even freely accepts it at the end, right? She's the one who, at the end, decides to blow up everything.
Yeah.
And in doing so, maims herself to the point where she's like, there's nothing left for me here.
Yeah.
I can't do anything, so you might as well just take this heart that will become a crystal for you to put on a mantle.
And certainly she does not win in this either. Mm-hmm. I would just say, I don't know that either of them truly win. Yeah. But I still see your point.
Yeah, which speaks, I think, to the bleak feeling that you get.
Right.
Is that it's just sort of this, like you say, he's trapped in this cycle and she's paid with it with her life. Or maybe not her life, but her ability to love unconditionally, let's say.
There were ways in which I felt like after seeing it, there were some things I felt were very easy to understand about it, and there were some things I really couldn't wrap my head around. Mm-hmm. And maybe I was a little too fixated on this question of what point is this trying to make? And then about 2 weeks after that movie comes out, and I saw it very close to the release, suddenly the Harvey Weinstein allegations come out, and then the Me Too movement begins, and there's this whole reckoning on toxic masculinity. And maybe it was a combination of the visceral intensity of that movie combined with the subject matter, the relationship it portrays. I think I had the feeling then that this is not the right movie to consider in this moment.
Yeah, and because there is a power imbalance between these two characters ultimately, and that he always has the final say. Nobody listens to her, anything Definitely she says not. Throughout the whole film. And so whether or not toxic masculinity plays is a factor in this, there is the man in power and the woman who is ultimately at his whim.
Yeah. To me, it felt less like it was targeting masculinity and more towards just selfishness.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the baby angle can definitely further this idea that it's toxic masculinity over femininity, right? You could look at it that way, but you can also look at it as just a useful symbol of something that you and your partner create yourselves, and that only you and your partner create. Something that's intimate about the relationship between two people, as opposed to this intimate thing having to compete with the art, the other things that get created.
Yeah.
Peripherally in
ultimately,
a relationship.
Even when they have the child, he wants other people to still shower him with praise and love. It's still not enough for him to just have her and their beautiful child. He still needs to say but the people they want to see. And then obviously that goes back to the biblical allegory of this film. The child is Jesus. The child is killed by humanity. So that's another aspect of bringing the child in
the sense of shock value too, I feel like that was the part of the movie that really got to me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just like, because when, the baby finally is born, it's very close to the end of the movie, and the baby is only present for, it can't be more than a few minutes of the runtime, because, I'm a little hazy on the exact details, but I think, like, the baby's born, and there's this scene
she's locked herself in the room.
Mm-hmm. She's locked herself in the room, and she's cradling the baby. Jennifer Lawrence is, and it eventually comes to this scene where Javier Bardem is kind of just like staring at her from a chair in the same room, and you can see it in his eyes that he eventually he's kind of saying like, "Give me the baby," with his expression, and then it eventually leads to this this very violent debacle where the baby is brought out to these cultish fans out in the exterior, within the house, but the exterior of that room, and then the baby is very rapidly sacrificed, and brutally at that. Too.
Yeah, like the head snaps back.
Yeah,
it's pretty. You were asking me about what it feels like to watch this movie as a parent.
I was very curious,
and that's one aspect that comes in. It's like not entertaining to watch that in the slightest from a technical crafts perspective. There's no amount of that makes that feel good. And I don't think you necessarily need to be a parent to feel that way. The fragility of a newborn is something that you yourself feel so entrusted with. So watching, a baby just kind of getting passed along and then suddenly ripped apart.
And then
pretty awful.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of Train Spotting, which also has a horrifying scene regarding a baby.
Yeah, in a completely different context, but yeah, even as a non-parent, it's just
from a human perspective.
Yeah, from a human point of view, it's absolutely gut-wrenching to watch.
Yeah,
and so to the extent that Darren Aronofsky aimed to really be like, to use an expression you used earlier, punk with the movie, to really, beat you over the head with it. I mean, it worked. Mm-hmm. And, even like I had only at that point seen Black Swan beforehand, and even so, I did not know what I was in for. And maybe what also affected my initial reaction to the movie, within such a short span of time, I saw two movies that left me absolutely speechless in kind of a horrified way after watching them in the theater, which is something that does not happen to me often. And I see a lot of movies. About a month before that movie came out, I had seen Catherine Bigelow's film Detroit, and which on the surface has nothing to do with Mother. I mean, it's, the subject matter is very, very different. And whereas Mother is an allegory on many fronts, Detroit aims to be a depiction of something real.
Historical. Right?
Yeah, it's historical.
Yeah.
And, it depicts a massacre that occurred during the Detroit riots of 1967 at the Algiers Motel, in which 3 people were killed at the hands of the police. And it's a very long, drawn-out display of the violence that occurred in that scene, or in that situation. And the question that I was asking myself after watching that movie, I guess somewhat similarly to Mother, is whether this movie is, kind of like exposing something or indulging in it. Mm-hmm. Because, it seemed there was an extent to which, while, in terms of intention, that movie, Detroit, seemed designed to kind of call out the systemic injustice that occurs within its story arc. It's sort of, there's a point where it sort of assumes that the viewer understands that, and then is just displaying the violence in a sort of like detached, almost journalistic sort of way. And it really makes you wonder, like, is it worth assuming that of the viewer? And it just feels indulgent at a certain point, to the point that it's gratuitous.
So you're saying that there is an aspect of the craft of the movie and the care with which it seems to create its world, or to depict what's happening, that can make it feel, like you say, indulgent in some ways, or perhaps indulgent because it's trying to say something.
Right. Mm-hmm. And
is it indulgence for the sake of indulgence, or indulgence because being that technically well constructed, it's going to make its point clearer.
Yeah, like I look at this as indulgence for the sake of the larger metaphor that, as he says, number one is environmentalism. Ultimately, with her representing Mother Earth and humanity destroying her home and this just escalation of ultimately, I mean, global warming, more or less. I think that ultimately it's working towards the greater metaphor that I think makes it work for me rather than just feel like gratuitous.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that it can be, that we can talk about it in these many ways, and that even it was constructed in a way to be.
It works on different levels.
Yeah, it works on different levels. Exactly. I would put this out there, or I would ask you guys. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do we actually like the film? Because I do think it's interesting. I do think it's an interesting movie to talk about. But then I guess to your point about like whether something is indulgent for a point or indulgent to be indulgent, is the movie actually good, even though it's something that we have fun talking about?
I mean, this is a tough film to enjoy.
Yeah.
Because of everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
But it, to the question of, is this a quote unquote good movie? I think it's a very well made film.
Yeah.
I find the pacing fascinating because
Me too.
Obviously it has this intense crescendo towards the end, but I think it's really well paced in the first half as well, with them starting alone and then the man and woman coming in. Oh, and then the sons, and then there's a fight, and then the mourners. But then you also it's been about a year since I've seen it, but at that point, like when she finds out she's pregnant, like they leave, right?
Yes, although it kind of happens a little bit before.
Yeah.
At some point in the mourner's presence in the home, things reach a breaking point with her and the poet. And she basically says, she says, you say that you want kids, but we don't have sex, right? And that seems to either anger him or wake him up.
Because that's kind of an attack on his masculinity. I think he can look at it that way.
Absolutely. You could absolutely look at it that way, for sure. Yeah. That's probably the most aggressive thing that she ever says to him in that movie. And it clearly does anger him. I don't know what kind of romantic rhythms their life had before, but that was definitely a particularly angry start to intercourse.
And then you get this kind of reprieve. And Emilio, you mentioned that you actually watched this movie in 2 parts.
I did.
Because you're a very busy person. So is this where you broke it up?
Not quite. I got to about the part where Kristen Wiig comes in.
Yeah.
I'm not like a huge Kristen Wiig fan. I do think she's very talented.
Have you seen Barb and Star?
No, but I've heard
I've not
that's
seen that
good.
either.
Okay. You guys have got to watch.
Okay, okay.
I've been, hit or miss on Kristen Wiig myself, but I am totally sold by her in that movie, which probably could not be more different from this movie we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I just want to throw that recommendation.
Please do.
On the, going a little bit off the casting of Mother, I mean, I would not have noticed this the first time I saw it, but looking at the Wikipedia entry after the fact, I noticed that Emily Hampshire, who plays Stevie on Schitt's Creek, is in the movie as well. And Schitt's Creek was already airing by the time that Mother would have been made. And that was, a crossover that I completely missed, the first time seeing it that I would notice now.
Who is she in the film? Sorry, I didn't do a whole lot of...
She's somewhere in this kind of back half, right, where it's escalated so much.
I can't really remember, to be honest, but...
There are a couple quote-unquote fans that sort of have like speaking lines.
The people that break the sink or...
Yeah, exactly. Break the sink. Yeah. Or the guy who's like ripping pieces of wood off the wall, boards off the wall.
And what does he say to that? I mean, something like, he said I could have it. Or
no. He says in that moment, proof that we were here.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's another, funny enough, it's another, I guess, more superficial parallel that you can draw with a Paul Thomas Anderson movie to The Master, because there's a scene in that where Freddie Quell, Joaquin Phoenix's character, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, I'm struggling to remember his name at the moment, but they're in prison. And
very famous sequence.
Yeah, and then Joaquin Phoenix proceeds to bludgeon a sink and destroy it.
and like a bunk bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll come back to the original question.
Yeah.
I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you guys place this movie?
I do think it is, in many senses, a really good, well-made movie. And I would, on a scale of 1 to 10, probably give it like a 7.5, I would say. It's hard to justify the arbitrariness of some of these selections, but I feel like it's, I am allowing some room for like the, in that rating for, the memory of my initial reaction to it, and the sense that this is a movie that, opinions can evolve about.
Yeah. Do you think at the time of viewing, you would have rated this lower?
Not necessarily. I think I would have said maybe more on a craft level, I would have given it a 7.5, but on a content level, I probably would have just given no comment.
Fair enough.
This doesn't get a 5-star review on Letterboxd.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, no, in fact, it is somewhere on my Letterboxd. I think I gave it like a 3.5 star. Maybe in the sense of quality too. It's more a personal preference, but maybe there are different sorts of like pacing and sort of, aesthetic qualities of a movie that appeal to me a bit more. Maybe like it's not, completely my cup of tea, but I can respect the fact that it is a very competently made, well acted, well edited sort of movie. And actually, just to kind of finish off that point, I had my reaction at the time of its release. But one thing that I did think about it that I did not think about the Catherine Bigelow film, Detroit, was, maybe if I re-examine this at a different point in time, I might feel differently.
Yeah.
As, culture has changed and, I have, become a considerably more mature human being, I feel like I can see a lot more of what that movie was going for, maybe with less, less apprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to come back to your point about the pacing, because I totally agree. This movie is oddly paced, but it's also kind of like perfectly paced
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
it's very unnerving. One of the visuals that keeps sort of coming back in the film is sort of walking through the front door or like staring through the front door,
Yeah.
and that the front door is kind of this place of like reflection, but also this sort of like impending like doom. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like there's never a moment where the characters are comfortable at or find peace when they look out the front door at what is supposed to be this like serene nature.
Yeah.
And she feels trapped. Like other characters come and go. She is, I think, the only character to stay in the home the whole film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think Jennifer Lawrence is incredible in this movie. Like, I think her
she
performance...
understands the assignment.
She
in this
definitely
film.
does. She wears a lot on her face, but then also these like long shots that kind of show her very isolated wherever she is, There are a couple moments where the camera just sort of follows her from behind. And for like
Got
a
this
long
great
time...
long braid.
Totally. Yeah. But it's like, and you see her just kind of like trapped in this like endless loop of just like servitude. But the pacing was great. And I also feel like the reveals, the way the movie moves when they're inciting incidents that are kind of meant to sort of push the narrative, they always happen as and feel like disruptions.
Yeah.
It's like I'm thinking of the Michelle Pfeiffer's character when she goes, "What's that room?" It happens so quickly. The cutting to and from is really jarring, but it's sort of meant to kind of cue you in on like something is going to happen here.
Something's about to go
So there's a
down.
lot in the how the movie's made that I think it helps it feel like you're kind of in this death spiral.
Yeah. Oh,
know?
ultimately, yes.
I would rate this movie, I think, a tiny bit higher. I actually really enjoyed this movie. And I feel like this is a movie that I'd love to come back to like 2 or 3 years from now and just see how I feel.
Yeah. And I also feel like I would rate this movie around an 8, maybe 8.5 if I'm feeling generous.
I kind of feel like 8 or 8.5 was for me too.
But it's interesting because like Julian, you and I have always kind of fallen on different sides of this film, even though ultimately our ratings are not that vastly different.
Yeah.
And I think the first time you told me that you weren't a huge fan of this movie, I was surprised by that because although I understand all of your reasonings that we've talked about, but because you and and I think, have in common that we like a movie that's like a big swing. We've both recently seen Beau is Afraid, which is similar, where it's just like you just need to buckle up and go along for the ride and like not question it and like just let it happen. And that's another film, and another one that comes to mind is Men. That's like, these are other films that have been incredibly divisive in the last few years, where people have seen these films and come away from them with very intense opinions. And these are all films that I liked.
It's a good point though. And I do I couldn't say it better myself, a big swing that, I am the sort of person that when people talk about, like other people will watch a David Lynch movie and say like, I didn't get it. I'm the person who says I loved it, even for all of the confusion and seemingly contradictory elements that exist within them. I can't get enough of it. I can understand that reaction.
And it's funny, I know we're not really going to get into much talk on The Whale because you haven't seen it, and I don't think I fully processed my thoughts, but I actually, after watching The Whale, I said, I think this makes me like Mother less, just because it actually, like, it almost soured me a little bit on Aronofsky as a filmmaker, and that might be a little bit harsh, but my point is that I think when I first saw Mother, I probably would have given it a 9, and I've actually come down from that a little bit since initial viewing.
Was there something about what happened in The Whale that made you go, okay, there's something about the DNA of this filmmaker that is making me rethink something about this past film that I thought?
I think that part of it for me is the fact that The Whale is a film written by and directed by and starring and based on a play about a fat person, all by non-fat people. So it's one of those situations where it's like, this does feel exploitative because it's a playwright who is not fat and then a filmmaker who is not fat starring an actor in a fat suit. And I think ultimately that's where it feels exploitative to me, where it's like, well, did you actually have like the lived experience of fat people in the making of this film? And I think then it kind of made me think about Jennifer Lawrence's comments on her terrible experience in the making of Mother that we've alluded to a little bit. And like I said, I still defend Mother, and I still overall like Aronofsky as a filmmaker. But that was kind of my initial reaction to The Whale.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, which honestly I didn't fully consider until now. This all coming from, artists who do not have the lived experience of obesity. And I think one other dimension of The Whale that has certainly come up is that if you think about it less from the perspective of the physical appearance and embodiment of its main character, if you look at it from an emotional angle, I've heard some people say it works a little better that way, where like when you consider what Brendan Fraser has gone through, it's very publicly well known, the turmoil that he had to deal with for many, many years. And, seeing this as kind of
the metatextual reading of Brendan Fraser as like as somebody who was handicapped maybe in Hollywood.
But it's like, sort of the parallels of, I think I've even heard him speak about this in interviews, that he like was able to bring some very distinctly personal elements to the emotional aspect of that movie. Actually, to go a little bit into other things I've heard about Aronofsky's way of working, this evidently was not completely true for Mother, but I have heard that for The Whale, that he was like with all of his actors very like easygoing, that he would like do these morning meditations with them. I think I heard Hong Chow speak about this.
She's great in The Whale. I think she is the best actor. Like, she gives the best performance.
I might agree with that
movie.
Yeah, that she's great in that movie. And even though like the obesity of its main character is probably the most saliently featured aspect of that movie, that there really is a lot going on there that has nothing to do with that. There's like the main character's relationship with his daughter, which is fraught for reasons completely independent of that. There's this young missionary who's trying to proselytize him to kind of bring the biblical stuff into it. And yeah, so it really is like there's a lot going on in that movie, and I feel like, perhaps maybe to actually draw a comparison in my assessment of that with Mother, like I feel like it's hard to look at it just one way. I think there really is a lot going on to consider there.
I think the last point you mentioned there was a pretty good one in terms of movies that have more than just what you feel like is happening on the surface.
Yeah.
My engagement with this movie, I tried to keep sort of surface level because I feel like there was so much going on. It was such an assault by the end of the movie on your senses that I felt like just to sort of keep making sense of things, I was like, let me keep it right here.
Yeah.
And I felt like the movie worked. I thought really well on that level. And in hearing you guys talk, I feel like it works rather nicely on an environmental level. I think it works rather well on a biblical level. Yeah. I mean, I do think this is like a very solid 8, maybe an 8.5, depending on the day. Yeah. I rather enjoyed it. I'm grateful that you guys felt slightly divided or divided enough.
Just that half a point to 1 point.
It's a consequential half point there.
I guess so. But divided enough that we felt like it was important to bring it up and for me to engage with it for the first time. So
yeah,
I guess this is a nice natural place to sort of put a bow on this.
Yeah. And I would say too that, I think I am much more intrigued to rewatch it than I might have been before talking about it.
Sure. Well, it's funny because I sort of feel like my initial feeling watching it was like, man, do I want to watch this movie again? I don't know if I really do. Like, this is so unsettling as the kind of final third act of the film unfolds. But I think I came away from it feeling like there was a world to revisit. There were details to keep mining. I think it is a movie, like I said, I think in a couple years, I'd love to sort of see it again and see how I feel. Yeah. And maybe I'll be in a better place. Maybe in those years, the climate crisis will take this dramatic upturn in all of our lives.
And or we'll pass the Green New Deal and we'll just feel really optimistic.
Maybe so. Yeah. And maybe we can just think about it as artists being really self-centered. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. Guys, this has been a lot of fun.
It's been a great time.
Yeah,
thank you for indulging me on this. Yeah. Maybe we'll find another one of these to do. We'll find some other angle to sort of take and have a conversation on.
And thank you for proposing this idea.
We'll do this again sometime soon.
We'll be back.
Yeah. All right.